Why do so many intelligent people seem to prefer solitude? Why does it feel like the smarter someone is, the more time they spend alone thinking, reading, observing, and simply being? You're not imagining it, and you're not alone in wondering. In fact, this idea has deep roots in the world of philosophy, particularly in the work of a brilliant and often misunderstood thinker, Arthur Schopenhauer. Today, we'll explore the surprising connection between intelligence and solitude through the lens of Schopenhauer's philosophy, and why being alone might just be a sign of a powerful mind. Part 1. The value of solitude. Schopenhauer's view of solitude is radical, even by today's standards. Where many see isolation as a problem to be solved, Schopenhauer saw it as a necessity, a remedy, a source of clarity and insight rather than a symptom of dysfunction. In solitude, he believed, lies the foundation for true intellectual freedom and spiritual clarity. He wasn't alone in this view. The Stoics, those ancient champions of self-discipline, long praised the merits of self-sufficiency. Seneca urged his readers to withdraw from the crowd and tend to their inner gardens. Associate with people who are likely to improve you, he wrote. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. But more often, he advised, withdraw, reflect, recenter. In the East, Buddhist monks for centuries have retreated into temples high in the mountains, not to escape life, but to fully engage with it. In silence, they confront impermanence. In stillness, they seek understanding, not just of the world, but of the mind itself. But Schopenhauer brought something new to the conversation, psychological insight. He wasn't just concerned with philosophy as abstraction. He brought a kind of existential precision to solitude, treating it not as optional, but as essential. He argued that without solitude, we are merely fragments of ourselves, endlessly shaped by the expectations and projections of others. He famously wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." This idea cuts deep. It implies that in social life we become something else, versions tailored to others' perceptions. The moment we enter a crowd, we enter into a performance, adjusting, negotiating, reacting. But when we're alone, the masks fall away. The need to impress dissolves. We are no longer reflections of what others want us to be. We simply are. In that quiet, something profound takes place. Thoughts rise unprovoked. Emotions long buried begin to stir. Memories return, not always gently but truthfully. Solitude becomes a mirror, showing us things we've long avoided and offering insights we never knew we carried. To Schopenhauer, solitude wasn't a retreat from reality. It was a return to it, a return to depth, to introspection, to the sacred art of thought. It wasn't a luxury. It was the birthplace of truth. Part 2. The distraction of the crowd. If solitude is the sanctuary, the crowd is the storm. Schopenhauer was unsparing in his critique of social life. He saw much of it as a dance of distraction, a cycle of shallow conversations, repetitive rituals, and empty gestures, not because people are inherently shallow, but because society encourages us to live on the surface. We smile when we don't mean it. We laugh at things we don't find funny. We engage in gossip and small talk not out of joy, but out of expectation. Social life becomes theater. For thinkers, creators, seekers, this can be suffocating. In a world that prizes popularity over introspection, going deep is often seen as strange. But Schopenhauer understood that true insight doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from silence, from reflection, from being alone long enough to hear your own thoughts. Today we talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. But Schopenhauer would have seen that as symptomatic of something deeper, a fear of the self, a fear of confronting one's inner life without distraction, not a desire to connect, but a terror of silence. He wrote, "They flee themselves because they are empty." Harsh, yes, but what if he's right? What if our constant craving for interaction is not driven by the love of others, but by a fear of being alone with our minds? What if our devices, our streaming, our social feeds, all serve the same purpose? To protect us from confronting the raw materials of our own consciousness. Schopenhauer saw this long before smartphones, long before social media, and yet his words ring truer now than ever. He wasn't just observing a philosophical truth, he was predicting a cultural one. Part 3. Intelligence and internal richness. Why is it some find solitude unbearable, while others find it nourishing, even necessary? Schopenhauer pointed to what he called internal richness. This isn't the kind of intelligence measured by one test or titles. It's something quieter, deeper, the ability to think for oneself, to inhabit one's mind with depth and creativity. An internally rich person does not require constant novelty. They can spend hours with a book or even a single idea and not feel restless. They can generate their own curiosity. They don't need the world to entertain them. They engage with the world on their own terms. Books become companions. Silence becomes a soundscape. Even memory becomes a source of wisdom. The richness isn't elitism, it's orientation. Some people, due to temperament, practice, or necessity, have developed the ability to dwell within, to reflect, to imagine, to connect the dots. Others, perhaps due to upbringing or distraction, have not, but the capacity exists in all of us if we're willing to cultivate it. Virginia Woolf famously said, "A woman must have money in a room of her own if she's to write fiction." But that room, as many have noted, is more than physical. It's a metaphor for inner space, psychological privacy, creative solitude. That's the kind of room Schopenhauer spoke of too. Solitude for the internally rich is that room, and in it they thrive. Part 4, the trap of boredom and the fear of emptiness. To Schopenhauer, boredom wasn't trivial, it was revealing. He believed that boredom was a kind of warning signal. When someone constantly seeks external stimulation, be it a conversation, entertainment, or endless scrolling, it suggests a kind of inner poverty, an inability to self-generate interest or purpose. He saw boredom not as the world failing to entertain us, but as the self failing to engage with itself. In his view, true freedom requires solitude, and if we can't bear solitude, we are not truly free. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom." Modern psychology echoes this. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow describes how deep, focused engagement leads to happiness and meaning. People who can become immersed in painting, music, writing, building, whatever their passion, report greater well-being. But to access flow, one must first know how to be alone, how to stay still long enough to enter that deeper space. When we fear boredom, what we're often fearing is silence, the kind of silence that forces us to confront unresolved thoughts, feelings, and memories. Schopenhauer didn't see this confrontation as cruel. He saw it as essential. If you avoid boredom at all costs, you also avoid insight. You never stay long enough in your own mind to learn what it's trying to teach you. Part 5, the pain and power of solitude. Let's be honest, solitude isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's brutal. It's one thing to romanticize being alone. It's another to sit in a silent room with your unfiltered thoughts. Many of the world's most brilliant minds have wrestled with the sharp edge of solitude. Van Gogh's years in Arles, Emily Dickinson's retreat into her Amherst home, Nietzsche wandering the Alps in near madness. Those were not glamorous sabbaticals, they were crucibles, places where the soul was stripped bare and rebuilt. Solitude at its most powerful is not about comfort, it's about truth. It brings up our contradictions, our traumas, our deepest doubts. It shows us the parts of ourselves we've ignored for years, and it demands something in return, honesty. But this is the price of authenticity. You can't know yourself fully if you're never alone. You can't understand your patterns, your wounds, your genius if your mind is always busy performing for others. In solitude, there is no applause, no role to play, no one to impress. And that, paradoxically, is where transformation begins. Part 6, Schopenhauer and the Age of Noise. Imagine Schopenhauer walking through a modern city. Screens everywhere, AirPods in every ear, advertisements yelling for attention, TikToks and Reels and scrolls without end. Distraction not as a habit, but as a lifestyle. He would likely see all of it as a sophisticated form of self-avoidance, a culture terrified of silence, a society that's forgotten how to be still. And yet beneath the noise, something is shifting. There's a quiet rebellion underway. You see it in the popularity of digital detoxes, silent retreats, journaling, slow living, mindfulness, minimalism. These aren't just trends, they're symptoms of longing, a hunger for depth, a craving for something real. We scroll, yes, but we're also searching for meaning, for relief, for home. And what Schopenhauer would remind us is that the only lasting relief, the only real home, is within. In a world that profits from our distraction, choosing to be alone even for an hour is an act of resistance. To walk without headphones, to read instead of scroll, to think instead of react. These are small revolutions, and these, Schopenhauer would say, are acts of profound intelligence. Part 7, the wisdom of stillness. So if you find yourself craving solitude, don't resist it. You're not broken. You're not antisocial. You are tuned into a deeper frequency than most, and in silence, something will emerge. Your true voice, your real questions, your unfiltered desires. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Carl Jung spoke of the inward path as the only road to psychological wholeness. Solitude is not emptiness. It is the presence of truth. It's where the noise falls away and patterns begin to emerge. It's where pain becomes purpose. It's where your soul finally starts to speak. And, if you're patient enough, you'll learn to listen. Arthur Schopenhauer didn't think solitude was for everyone. It was, he believed, essential for the thinker, the philosopher, the artist, anyone who wanted to live a life of depth rather than distraction. So if that is you, honor your solitude. Protect it. Trust it. Let it be the garden where your thoughts bloom, the cave where your wisdom echoes, the ocean where your spirit swims. In a world addicted to noise, the courage to be alone may just be the last form of true rebellion, and perhaps the deepest form of intelligence.